What is good, gamers? Welcome back to another Switch retrospective video as we count down the weeks to the Nintendo Switch 2. This time we are at everybody's favorite year in the history of years, 2020. Now, to say this was a bit of an unorthodox year would be, well, a little bit of an understatement, as the whole freaking world shut down, and of course Nintendo having less games than usual was the worst side effect of it all. But unlike 2018, where I would say that the weakness in that year was Nintendo's fault, a lot of the weakness of this year was definitely more due to external factors, or at least I would like to believe that. With that said though, let's start with March 2020, where we got two releases. The first was a game that I believe was only announced a couple months earlier in January, being Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. This was a full-on remake of the 2006 Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS game, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team. Now, I've always had a soft spot for the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, or at least the first two, and I do think this is a pretty good game. I get that it's not everybody's thing, but I have to say I'm pretty impressed with the level of quality this remake had. This isn't just some simple remaster or upscaling. They really did go in there and remake the entire world to have this sort of storybook watercolor painting effect, and it looks pretty good. They also redid all of the music, and the music was already quite strong, but now I feel like it's even better. Again, I get that the randomized nature of these games isn't for everybody, but if you're a fan of the Mystery Dungeon games or Pokemon games with an actual story, I would totally recommend this game. My only main complaint is, where the freak is the remake of the Explorers game? We got all these same system sequels over the past couple years that are reusing assets or engines cleverly, but we never got a follow-up to this game, and I'm pretty sure this game did pretty well sales-wise. The last time it was updated, the game was at around 1.9 million units worldwide, so by now it has to be over 2 million, and I feel like that warrants a sequel. I don't know, if they're gonna kill off the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, at least kill it off after you remake the best games in the series. But okay, the next game in March was definitely the crown jewel of not only the month, but really of this entire release year. That was Animal Crossing New Horizons. I already made a full video about this game that you can go check out for my more in-depth thoughts, but basically I can acknowledge what they were going for with this game. I just feel like it sacrificed a lot of the Animal Crossing DNA in favor for this blank slate, making the game feel more like a crafting simulator than a life simulator. Okay, and then we didn't get anything in April, but in May we got Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Believe it or not, this was actually the second time that the game had been re-released. The original came out in 2010, at least in Japan, and then 2015 saw a new Nintendo 3DS exclusive remaster. Sure, they had to cut the frame rate down a bit and reduce some of the texture quality, amongst a few other effects being minimalized, but I honestly think that 3DS port has to be one of the most technically impressive games on the system, or heck, just across Nintendo's entire handheld history. But finally, with this Nintendo Switch re-release, the masterpiece of Xenoblade Chronicles was available on a widespread level. This remaster, remake, whatever sort of weird purgatory state of a game you want to classify it as, not only had a brand new UI that was way cleaner and sexier, but they also redid a lot of the models, a lot of the textures, a lot of the lighting, and just in general spruced up the game a lot to bring it to the level of quality that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was at, if not even surpassing it. And speaking of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, that game got a pretty massive DLC expansion in 2018, and I guess sort of following along those same footsteps, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition also got a pretty massive extra campaign. They also redid a lot of the music in the game, and I'm gonna be real, I don't prefer a single one of them to the originals. Maybe I'm nostalgia blind or nostalgia deaf, I guess, in that case. But yeah, luckily they did allow you to choose between which version, the classic or the new remix of the song you want to listen to, and I do like most of the new remixes. I just prefer the instrumentation and mixing on the older ones. Okay, so 2020 has been a pretty whatever year so far, but fellas, this next game is unironically my pick for the game of the year, Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics. If you have been missing out on that Wii U era quirky Nintendo minigame collection charm, this game is for you. Now, I'm not going to say that it has the exact same type of charm as the Wii Sports or Wii Play games, but it certainly evokes a lot of the same qualities. There's a very clean and cohesive visual style going on here. The sound design is just immaculate. I mean, those wooden clicks and those metal clacks going together with the pieces moving around, it just sounds way too good. The games are fun to play, and holy crap, that soundtrack is insane. I mean, this has got to be one of the best soundtracks of the entire Nintendo Switch game library, and I'm being 100% serious. There's this great, cozy studio jazz vibe to the whole soundtrack, with these strong melodies backed by great chord progressions, this really warm instrumentation, and I don't know, the mixing is just incredible here. Oh, and the game is only $40. I mean, this is just Nintendo, you're spoiling us. It is a great game. My only real complaint is that there's not a lot of minigames that can be played with 3 or 4 players, which is kind of weird. And I guess I understand that with a lot of these being based off of real life board games, they're kind of designed for 2 people, but like, I feel like a good chunk of these could be played with 3 or 4 players, and they just kind of didn't do that. Now, it is easy to work around that and just kind of make teams of, you know, in a 2-player match, you have like 5 people on one team, 5 people on the other team. But still, it would be nice if it was a little more natural to have, you know, 4 players in a lot of these games. But I digress. Anyways, next up we got Paper Mario the Origami King. Frick me, man. I will never forget. It was some random May day. I woke up, Nintendo Shadow drops a trailer on YouTube for Paper Mario and the Origami King. Now, a quick history lesson. Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door is amongst my favorite games of all time. I would say I have like 7 games that are in a deadlock eternal competition with each other for the crown of my favorite title. It's this ever shuffling pool, and it really just depends on the day of the week which one takes the crown for me. And by the way, the first Paper Mario game is not far behind it, and you know what? I actually think Super Paper Mario is not that far behind it. Even though that game got a little bit, let's just say, adventurous with its gameplay style, it still very much maintained what I would consider to be the spirit of a Paper Mario game. Anyways, the 2010s were the dark ages for Paper Mario, yada yada. You've heard the story a million times before. So we get to Paper Mario the Origami King. And here's the thing, right? Sticker Star was not great, and it was kind of baffling they followed that up with Color Splash, which is essentially Sticker Star done right. But hey, maybe that game was already in development before they could really assess the reception to Paper Mario Sticker Star. I'm willing to give them a little bit of leeway on that. But to do it again for Origami King, that just reeks of hubris. Like, whoever was in charge of this project just had absolutely no desire to listen to the feedback, no desire to give people what they wanted to, and just had this hell-bent insistence on making Paper Mario anything but Paper Mario. And the thing is, you know, as time has gone on, I've actually grown to appreciate Color Splash a lot more, and it's without a doubt my favorite in the modern trilogy, because at least that game doubled down on Sticker Star and said, hey, we're gonna try to, you know, see our vision through that we had for this game, but really make it the best it could possibly be. Now, I still don't want that to be the direction that Paper Mario goes in, but I can at least respect Color Splash for sticking to the plan and really executing what Sticker Star sort of failed to do in its best light. But you see, here's where Origami King is so weird. It feels like it's a game at odds with itself, because once again, there's this dogmatic insistence on being different, on being just anything but what has come before, and yet there was also a lot of these weird halfway concessions to the older Paper Mario games. It's like they knew people wanted that and that worked better, but they weren't willing to just go all in on it. You wanted experience points after battle? No, but you can increase your confetti bag. You wanted to have badges in battle? No, but at least we'll let you use the normal jump and hammer attacks whenever you want. You wanted to have partners again? No, but we will give you these personality-less allies that follow you around for a little bit and, you know, sort of have the appearance of a partner, but, you know, don't actually really help you battle, don't have field abilities, don't really stick with you and grow throughout the game. It's like, it's this twisted monkey paw version, and it's just kind of yikes. Now, here's the thing. I can understand the creative dilemma of not necessarily wanting to just make Thousand Year Door after Thousand Year Door after Thousand Year Door, every single Paper Mario game being the same as that, and wanting to try something new. And the thing is, I would argue they did that and succeeded with Super Paper Mario. However, I do think you have to consider when you're working with an established series that there is a foundation that has been set. That's just kind of the way things are. Now, to go along with this house analogy I've started, I would argue that you can change the framework on top of that foundation if you want to try something different, like Super Paper Mario. That game still had the foundation, or the quote spirit, of Paper Mario fully intact, but they did change some things around. Most notably being that rather than a JRPG turn-based game progression, it was now an action platformer. I would consider that to be a very successful creative detour. The development team got to satisfy their itch to do something different while still respecting the foundation of the games that came before it and also the fans that followed the series up until this point. With the modern trilogy of Paper Mario games, however, I feel that that foundation has been completely unearthed in favor of this very shallow approach to gameplay. The battle system is disposable, the puzzles are disposable, the characters are disposable. You might even think that this was a recyclable Paper Mario. I'm killing myself. Anyways, I was just not a fan of the direction the series was going in, and it was just truly baffling to me that they decided to triple down with Paper Mario the Origami King. As dramatic as it is to say, I felt like the Paper Mario series was basically dead to me by this point. It was just moving in a direction that I did not care for, and it would attract newcomers to the series with these new games, and to them, this is what the foundation of Paper Mario would be going forward, and it would just make for an entire identity crisis mess, which frankly, I did not care for, and so I resigned myself to the opinion that Paper Mario was an incredible trilogy, and I'm so grateful and lucky I got to play the 3 Paper Mario games, and there would never be another entry in the series again. Okay, but that was pretty dramatic. Let's move on now. September 2020, we get Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and this game is amazing. I know some people were kind of disappointed with the remake quality of this title, but like, bro, we were getting Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy for $60. That's a great deal. Some people are bummed that there wasn't a Galaxy 2 or that they didn't fully remake Mario 64 or any of that stuff, but frankly, I think that, when it comes to the remaster remaking angle, it's pretty unrealistic to expect them to completely redo all 3 games or even one of them, because it's like, bro, these are great games, and I think the point of this package was not necessarily to be like, here's a new version of them. It was more like, hey, here's a way for you to experience these classic games just like you'd used to back in the day, now on modern hardware. And really quick, because I just want to bring this up now in case I don't say this again in the future, I have long held this opinion. I'm pretty sure I've said this on the channel before, but immediately following the release of these games, this idea struck me, and I think if there was ever a time for it to happen, it would actually be this year, the year of our Lord 2025, also the 40th anniversary of Mario, Super Mario 3D All-Stars Volume 2. I've said this for a while. This collection would include Super Mario 64 DS, Super Mario Galaxy 2, and Super Mario 3D Land. They would up-res all of them to look nice on the big screen, and I'm thinking with the Switch 2, you could use the mouse controls to emulate some of the touchscreen minigames, and Super Mario 64 DS, they could get Super Mario 3D Land, the 3D World Remaster treatment by speeding up the game a little bit, or if they don't really want to do that to preserve the purity of the game, they could at the very least up-res the game to look nicer in 4K, kind of like the emulators. And of course, with the Nintendo Switch 2 camera, you could replicate Yoshi by sticking your tongue out in real life to shoot out Yoshi's tongue and catch onto the fruits or the flowers or whatever you're trying to eat. Tell me this is not happening on October 23rd, 2025. Tell me, I'm waiting. Tell me in the comments. Let me know how wrong I am so that you boost the video and the algorithm with more engagement. But okay, moving along, in October we got 2 releases. One of them was Mario Kart Live Circuit. Definitely a peculiar release from Nintendo. This was sort of like an exotic toy in the same sense as Labo, or maybe a little bit less, the Ring Fit Adventure game that came out a year before. This was basically a Mario Kart RC car that you control with your Nintendo Switch, and there's a camera on it so that you can kind of see the world around you and turn your living room into a racetrack. So yes, the fun is sort of short-lived, although I will say if you have a child or a dog or cat, it is just like exponentially more funny to play with this thing and just see their face blown up on the TV. But yeah, honestly, I can't really say that this is like a great game. It's kind of just like I said before, a fun exotic toy. So if you're into this sort of thing, go get it. Otherwise, it's kind of whatever. But we also got Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Now, Pikmin had yet to see a release on the Nintendo Switch up until this point, and I guess looking back at the whole thing, it was only about 3.5 years into the system's life, so not terribly long, but back in 2020, I kind of feel like it felt like we were never getting Pikmin on the Switch. It was like, oh my gosh, we're getting everything except for Pikmin, but we did get Pikmin 3 Deluxe this month. And you know what? I am a little bummed it didn't explode in the sales department bigger, because this was sort of at the peak of Nintendo Switch purchasing interest. And although it certainly did well, it's the best-selling entry in the series up until this point, with I believe around 3 million units sold worldwide. Certainly commendable. My Pikmin fantasies were putting the game at like 10 plus million units. Yeah, that was probably a little crazy, but one day we will get there. Pikmin 3 Deluxe is a very interesting game, because I remember when it first came out on the Wii U, I was a little underwhelmed, and I was like a 12-year-old when I played this game. I wasn't underwhelmed because the game was bad or lacking in quality or broken or anything like that, but just because it felt comparatively small in scope to Pikmin 2. I think this was due to the lack of caves, and the campaign was also shorter than Pikmin 2, so I just felt like, dang Pikmin bros, we really waited a decade for a game that was barely longer than Pikmin 1. But here's the thing. Time has been incredibly kind to Pikmin 3, and as more has passed, I've really grown to appreciate this title and see it less as a smaller game and more as an extremely focused game. I feel like during the development cycle of this game, they filtered out all the fat and extracted the dopamine crystals, then hooked up the players to a dopamine streamline, surging a clean river of premium Pikmin quality right into the player's veins. Every aspect of Pikmin 3 feels deliberately designed to give the player the best experience, and I have just grown to love it so much. And I do kind of love the fact that it is a briefer campaign, because that allows for replays and that allows you to get more familiar with this world that, again, I feel was designed by people who were very thoughtful with every individual aspect of it. And then of course the multiplayer just absolutely puts Pikmin 4 to shame. I mean, Pikmin 4 I have a lot of thoughts on, but for now, I will just say that it is embarrassing they followed up Pikmin 3's multiplayer with Pikmin 4's. The campaign is great in multiplayer for Pikmin 3, but where the game truly shines is the mission mode and especially Bingo Battle. I mean, my wife and I still play Bingo Battle to this day, and between the both of us, we've racked up probably over 150 hours of game time just in Bingo Battle. It is that replayable, it is that fun, and it is truly a perfect local multiplayer experience that, frankly, I really hope if there is some sort of Pikmin 3 Deluxe Nintendo Switch 2 edition, which is, we're just getting crazy with the naming on that one, but if they do somehow ever update that game, it would be awesome if they added online and a few more maps to the Bingo Battle. I also think this is still definitely the best Pikmin game to start out with if you're getting into the series. Yes, even more than Pikmin 4, a game that felt like it was constantly pandering to newcomers. Pikmin 3 actually is so easy to get into, and the skill ceiling is high, so once you've gotten good at the game, you can keep replaying it and get better and better times, get better and better performances, and just feel more satisfied with your control over your Pikmin slave army. I love Pikmin 3 Deluxe. It is truly a masterpiece. But I could talk about that all day. Let's move into a game that I could talk about for no more than 20 seconds. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I bought this game. I have never played it, but it looks cool. It looks like it lags a little bit. I think I probably prefer the just wacky crossover nature of Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Alrighty, and now going into 2021, I believe we are kicking off what I like to call Season 2 of the Nintendo Switch. The first season of the Switch saw a lot of series getting their first entries, especially a lot of the bigger Nintendo series, on the platform, whereas I think Season 2 will see a lot of same system sequels, more involved remakes, and smaller new projects rather than the more bombastic AAA experiences Nintendo was focusing on for the first season. And that all kicks off with our second main 3D Mario game on the system, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Super Mario 3D World is a game that, you know, speaking of being underwhelmed, I was quite underwhelmed by back in 2013, and again, I was a freaking 12-year-old! I mean, Nintendo, how are you disappointing a 12-year-old? But yeah, I remember thinking like, this is a good game, but it's not nearly as epic as Galaxy or as, you know, fun and sandboxy as Super Mario 64 Sunshine. It just kind of felt like new Super Mario Bros. In 3D. And here's the thing, I see this take a lot online where people say, oh, well, in a post-Odyssey world, we can appreciate the tight platforming that 3D World offered even more. And like, no, I don't agree with that. I still have the same problems with the game now as I did back then. Sure, maybe that makes the game feel a little more distinguished because we got another sandbox 3D Mario game, but that doesn't mean that the problems I had with it back then are suddenly gone. I still think this game is lacking in the ambition, the grandiose nature, and even the level design, which I know, maybe that's a hot take. Now, the levels are great in this game. I'm not saying they're bad, but I do think they suffer from the fact that this game was designed for up to 4 players at a time, and so there's a lot of open space, and often that's just not very interesting. Alright, I know by now you're probably thinking, I just freaking hate Super Mario 3D World. Nah, I still think it's a ton of fun and very easy to throw back in and replay with friends. It is a great game, easily a 9 out of 10. I just don't want that to be the future of 3D Mario. And hey, I will admit the platforming being so tight is satisfying to control when you're trying to just blaze through the game. Again, that's not what I want for my 3D Mario games. That's better for, I think, a 2D Mario game, or for the more platforming specific challenge rooms that we saw in Super Mario Odyssey within a bigger sandbox 3D Mario. But with all of that said, they actually went so hard on this Wii U remaster. In fact, it's probably the best of all of the Wii U remasters on the Nintendo Switch, and that's even before I get into the entire new campaign they added. For the base Super Mario 3D World, not only did they allow you to play the game online, play the Captain Toad levels in 4 players, repurpose the stamps into this brand new photo mode a la Super Mario Odyssey, where you can place them around on the wall, which is just super cool and a very clever reworking of these stamps that were originally used for Miiverse. But perhaps most surprising and best of all, they added some new moves to the Mario Friends moveset and made the game faster. As in, like, everything is just faster now, which is kind of awesome, and I have to say, kind of unexpected. The slowest character of the 5 playable characters in this game is Rosalina, I believe. And on the Wii U version, Toad, who is the fastest character's max speed, is still slower than Rosalina's normal speed in the Switch version. And you know what? You might think, well, that's not a huge deal, you just run around quicker, but I have to say, what might seem like a deceptively small adjustment was a brilliant way to highlight Super Mario 3D World's focus on that tight platforming. Now that the game is a lot snappier and a lot more responsive, I think it really does shine more as a pure 3D platformer. And again, I still have my issues with the game, but I think that this is without a doubt the best way to experience it, and it certainly made the game a lot more just fun for me. But then of course we have to get into Bowser's Fury. They added an entire extra campaign to this title, and it plays like if Mario Odyssey and 3D World had a baby. They essentially stitched together, give or take 6 or 7 3D World levels, but had them all connected via one giant overworld where you can travel between them on Plessis in the water. Because Bowser's Fury is a single player experience, I feel like that allowed the developers to make more intentional level designs. There's less wasted space in these levels than in the base 3D World levels, and there also just seems to be more collectibles, secrets, and things for you to discover around every corner than that of the linear 3D World. So yeah, I loved Bowser's Fury. It's a ton of fun, and it is very short. I'm pretty sure I can 100% it in under 5 hours now, and I'm not even like speed running or anything, that's just me playing, but it is a lot of fun, and it is very easy to replay. Overall, this is definitely the definitive way to play Super Mario 3D World, and an easy recommendation for those who wanted another 3D Mario outing after Mario Odyssey. Alrighty, and our last game is Bravely Default 2. Now, if any of you guys saw my reaction to the remaster of Bravely Default for the Switch 2, I think you understand that I freaking love these games. Bravely Default is with Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door in that ever-shuffling pool of my all-time game contenders, and its sequel, Bravely Second, is also very close behind that. So, needless to say, I was super excited for Bravely Default 2. Plus, they were getting the composer from the first game, Revo of Linked Horizon, back. I mean, bro, that is so hype in and of itself. So, between being a new Bravely Default game, having the composer from the first game back, looking quite good visually, at least in the pre-release marketing, I was super excited for this and expected it to be potentially one of my favorite games ever. Unfortunately, it is quite a good bit worse than the first 2 Bravely games, in my opinion. Look, this is still a great game, an 8 out of 10 easy, but I have quite a few problems with it. First off, the characters just feel like such cheap derivatives of those that we saw in Bravely Default. Most of them fulfill a very similar function in their respective world, which, by the way, this is an entirely different world from the first 2 games as well, and it just felt like, why? Why would you not use the old characters and just make kind of cheap imitations of them for this title? And that same criticism could be levied against the world too. Luxendark from Bravely Default and Bravely Second was just a lot more magical and interesting to explore, whereas I don't even remember the name of the world from this game. It just kind of feels like generic JRPG world number 383 or whatever. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the world or the characters, but definitely the worst thing is the story. Bravely Default has a masterpiece story that will blow your mind multiple times. You're gonna have holes all over your head by the end of this game. It is just genius. And Bravely Second, although not quite as insane as Bravely Default's, still had a really good story that was driven by very strong character writing. Bravely Default 2 though is just kind of whatever. I was like, what the heck? What is going on here? And the tone is also way off. I complained about this with Xenoblade 2, but I feel like the tone of this game is very similar to that of Xenoblade 2. It is more of a jokey, light-hearted game with the occasional serious moment rather than a more mature, thoughtful adventure with occasional funny moments, and I prefer the latter. I want to get invested in this world, in these characters, and when people are constantly coming back to life after dying, or like there's a betrayal that you could have seen from like 5 miles away, I'm not going to be able to take your game very seriously. And unfortunately, Bravely Default 2's story is not a serious story. There are cool moments for sure, but it's not something that I'm going to remember or talk about or share with people after beating it or after something particularly wild happens. It's just kind of like, well, that just happened, moving along. But okay, I'll stop being such a negative Nelly, and I'll tell you some good things about this game. The combat is fantastic. The game's namesake, the Brave and Default system, is back, and it is just so addicting. It's such a great way to up the strategy when you're battling bosses or just normal enemies, and the job system is so fun too. It's awesome to max out all your different job classes, get these different skills and abilities, and really feel like you're kind of just cheating because of the ways you can combine different things, and it's just a ton of fun. I love the battles in this game. You know you made a good JRPG turn-based battle system when the player actually wants to grind. Another good thing, the visuals are super nice, and even though I do prefer the character designs for the 3DS titles, the lighting, the graphics, the world, it all looks pretty dang good in this game. And then of course there's the music, where Revo once again hit it out of the park. I'm gonna complain again, I'm sorry, but it's not as good as the first game. The overworlds, the towns, and some of the event soundtrack pieces are just sort of whatever in this game. Like, they sound nice, but they're not particularly memorable. However, when it comes to the battle themes, he went insane with this game. I think this has to be some of, if not the greatest collection of JRPG battle themes of all time. The normal battle song is banger, there's like a million different boss songs and they're all banger. The like third to last final boss song is like insanely good, and then the final boss song, that might be like the best song ever made. If you haven't listened to it yet, you've got to go check it out after this. The production is insane, the melody is straight fire, the chords are banger, there's a lot of that great neoclassical metal shredding going on there. Like, it just sounds immaculate. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the soundtrack, especially the battle themes. But goodness gracious, I am starting to really rant about some of these games. We should probably wrap this up. Overall, 2020 was not a great year for the Nintendo Switch. There were 11 game releases, which is down a bit from the last few years, but I don't think that's a terrible number overall. However, let's examine these releases. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 re-releases in here, okay? 5 of those are re-releases. One of them is like this experimental toy, and then if we look at the original games here, well, my feelings on Animal Crossing were made in my review. I was disappointed by it. Paper Mario The Origami King, I was disappointed by, and I didn't play Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which means basically the only 2 original releases in this year that I truly enjoyed were Bravely Default 2 and Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics. Amazing. So yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the games this year. With that said though, holy frick, look at those sales figures. If you guys remember, at the end of last video, we were at like 55.5 million units sold worldwide. The Switch sold almost 30 million units in this year. That is insane. That is like, that's just wild. This thing truly exploded in the sales department, and it's crazy because like the first year it sold what, 17 million. It basically doubled that in the second year. Then it sold like 20 million, right? So we were thinking, you know, maybe next year we'll sell like 21 or 22. No, we sold basically 30 million of these MFs in 2020. That is wild. I think that, you know, with the world events going on, a lot of people were kind of looking for things to do inside, and so maybe that really exploded the video game sales department. But yeah, man, that is truly crazy, and I have to wonder if this whole year didn't happen for Nintendo, would the Switch actually be as much of a viral sensation as it currently is? Just something kind of fun to think about. Anyways, with that said, that will wrap up our look back at 2020 for the Nintendo Switch. I will catch you guys later in another video. Peace. Yo gamers, what is good? Jackson here to talk about some of the developments in the Switch 2 scene over the last week. Honestly, there was not a lot. I think the most interesting thing was a pretty massive system update for the Nintendo Switch, which I feel like was really just laying the groundwork down for the Nintendo Switch 2. This update gave us virtual game cards, which is a pretty cool service that allows you to essentially share your digital downloads with other people. There was also the addition of GameShare. It's not something you can do with a Nintendo Switch directly, but you can kind of beam or cast a game on a Switch 2 onto a Nintendo Switch. So I guess once the Switch 2 is released, we'll be able to mess around with that feature a little more. The eShop and the news colors were changed, and the eShop is now this sexy coat of red. I actually quite like it. I know some people are nostalgic for the orange one, but I don't know. I feel like red is Nintendo's color, right? So it looks pretty clean. They also retconned Donkey Kong. Like, they didn't even just give us two options. It's just like they replaced the old Donkey Kong icon with his new design, which I'm fine with, I guess. I do like his new design, but it's just kind of funny that, you know, they're not even giving you the option anymore. It's just like, nope, this is Donkey Kong now. They also updated Mario and Luigi's renders, and I do not like them. They're in this weird uncanny valley where it's like, okay, basically, here's my feelings. If you're gonna go with the slightly more realistic Mario, Odyssey is where that design peaked. You gotta keep it in the Odyssey realm. If you're gonna go with the more cartoonish Mario, you gotta go with this new, like, kind of Wonder Mario Kart World style, right? Like, it has to be one or the other. You can't do this creepy, uncanny valley, semi-hyper realistic, you know, Odyssey interpretation. Like, it looks weird. I don't like it. So yeah, those are kind of creepy. But yeah, that was a pretty cool update. It was just kind of fun to see, like, wow, they're really adding a lot of stuff here, and you know, this is like laying the groundwork down for the next generation. Kind of makes things feel more real. Apparently, the next creator's voice we're getting will be on Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, which at Koei Tecmo's financial briefing, they confirmed will be releasing in the 2025 winter. So yes, it is coming out this year. I made a video predicting the various Nintendo Switch 2 game release dates that we don't know yet, and I'm sticking by my November 6th prediction. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but yeah, that might be revealed to this upcoming Creator's Voice installment. And the next week, we're getting Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, so maybe we'll also get a release date then. These two are definitely way more interesting to me than the Creator's Voice games we've been seeing up until now. I don't know, I'm just like, Hades 2, cool, I guess. I'm not really my type of game. Hogwarts Legacy looks cool. Maybe I'll get it on a discount. Cyberpunk 2077, yeah, I'll probably also pick that up at some time if it's on a discount. I don't even remember what the other one was for, but yeah, I don't know, man. They've been for games I'm not super crazy about so far. But it definitely looks like things will change with these next few installments. Other than that, though, I can't really say a lot else happened. The Nintendo Music app celebrated its 6-month anniversary. We got Mario Kart 7 soundtrack on there, which I re-listened to, and I have to say it's very forgettable. Oh, but I guess Nintendo will also be holding their financial investors meeting. This would be for the last quarter of the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. I think this week. It'll either be this week or next week. That's going to be fun to see. We'll get some updated Switch sales figures. We'll see how well Donkey Kong Returns HD and Xenoblade X Definitive Edition did. And they'll probably talk a little bit more about Switch 2 logistical things. So I'm actually quite curious to see how this one will go. This will also actually mark a year since Nintendo confirmed they would be announcing the successor to the Switch 2. So it's kind of wild. Time is moving, right? We're also about a month away from the Switch 2 now. So it's getting real, guys. I'm hyped. We're finally almost there. But I think that'll wrap things up for this week's installment of the Switch 2 development scene. I will catch you guys later.